Hey everybody, Alex here with definitely the biggest mail day I've had on this channel since I started it. As you can see, I have picked up a candy card. This is the E95 1909 Philadelphia Caramel Thai Cobb. Some of you might be surprised to hear this, but this is a card that I've wanted for some time, somewhere around the middle of collecting the 53 Bowman set when I was still finishing that up. I was really leaning towards the pre-war direction, and I was having conversations even back then, this is a couple of years ago, about different cards that I wanted to go after, and this was one of the cards that was definitely at the top of the list. So I've been looking at this card for well over a couple of years, and I've seen cards come and go. I've watched auctions and I've really gotten to know this card. And this is not a card that you see a lot of in terms of Thai Cobb. Doesn't really get a lot of love in the hobby. Certainly don't see it on YouTube very much. The tobacco cards are going to get most of the attention, but for my money, literally, this is one of Thai Cobb's greatest cards. To me personally, next to the bat off-shoulder card in the T206 set, this is my favorite Thai Cobb card, and I'll get into why at some point. But this is a caramel card. It's a candy card, and so it's not a tobacco card. One thing I want to say real quick is I think one of the reasons people don't necessarily get into vintage or get into pre-war is because there's a lot of stuff that you might feel like you don't know about the cards. Well, let's be honest. Nobody knows anything about these cards at first. You got to start somewhere, and the information is a Google search away. I'm not going to claim to be an expert about any of these cards. I'm learning as I go. But that's part of the fun of it, is you have to enjoy the learning process, and I enjoy learning about these sets. I enjoy learning about these cards. So this is a caramel card. It came out by the Philadelphia Caramel Company. And the candy cards, this particular set, it's a very small set, and it's considered to be somewhat scarce compared to the tobacco cards. There's a lot of different theories as to why there are fewer cards from this set. One of the reasons that people will kind of theorize about is that because it's candy, the cards were marketed to kids, and kids are not going to be as careful with the cards, so very few of them survived. I can take issue with that theory because, just because it's caramel doesn't mean that kids are the only ones buying it. And, there's plenty of evidence of kids collecting tobacco cards as well. So that might have something to do with it, but who really knows? Anyway, this is a beautiful card. I'm very excited to have picked it up. I want to give a shout out to Brian B. Roth 6, who let me know about an auction that was going on where this card was in it, and he didn't necessarily know it, but I had my eye on that auction pretty much the day that he alerted me to it, and when the bidding ended, I was the one left standing, so really hasn't quite hit me yet, but let's take a closer look at this card. Okay, so right off the bat, you're going to see all the reasons that this got an SGC2. Sorry if you weren't able to see the grade before because of the lighting, but yeah, this is an SGC2. There's a lot of creasing, there's a lot of paper loss here and there. You can see it's got the classic rounded corners that most pre-war cards are going to have. There's a big, nice white crease just to the left of his face in the background there, what I like to call a lightning bolt. It's definitely a 2, and that's okay. Andrew Neff Said Cards likes to say that, a card in this shape looks the way a pre-war card should look, and I agree with him. I don't need a card that looks like it just came, out of the printing press. It's lived a life. It's 100 years old and still ticking, and it's totally fine with me that it has a little bit of wear and tear. So let's go ahead and take a look at this in a little bit more detail and put it under the loop. So I'm just holding this card underneath the loop to give a little bit more magnification. And so here's a look at Ty Cobb. Getting up close and personal, you can take a look at his turned up collar, and there actually looks like there's even some stitching there to hold it together. Here's a closer look at the rounded edges of the card. And here's a closer look at that nice lightning bolt just to the left of him there. All right, so let's take a look at the back. And the back has some interesting stories to tell, and I even have developed a little theory about this card and the life it had before it ended up in my hands. So first of all, like I said, this is a really small set. You're going to see the back has a checklist, and this set was all of 25 cards. You can see all the different players that are listed here, and there's some big names in here. There's some heavy hitters. You got Honus Wagner. Who else do you got? You got Chief Bender, Eddie Cicotti, Evers and Chance, of course, Eddie Plank, and others. And incidentally, they misspelled Christy Mathewson's name. One thing that's kind of fun about this card, if you look off to the right-hand side, you can see really faint dashes next to all the checklist names, and somebody tried to erase them. So whoever owned this card at one point was checking off maybe which cards they had or which cards they needed to get, which is a nice little piece of history to the card. Now, what I really want to point out, though, is the left-hand side of the card. If you take a look at the left-hand side of the card, you're going to notice that there's a really distinct dark line that runs the entire left-hand border of the card, and I have a theory about how that happened. Okay, so you got to remember this is 1909, so people aren't pulling cards out of packs and putting them into penny sleeves and top loaders. They're sticking their cards in their jacket pockets, they're throwing them into drawers and into books. So I think what happened to this card was that, maybe it was in somebody's desk drawer or something, and the majority of the card, if you look at the back of it, looks pretty nice, it's pretty clean, but there's that tiny sliver on the left-hand side that looks a little beat up. I feel like the majority of this card was covered up by something for a long period of time. Now, what was covering it? Maybe it was a book, maybe it was another stack of cards, maybe it was a cigar box, but something was protecting the majority of the card, but a small little bit of the card was getting exposed to just, things getting thrown in and out of the drawer, dust and grime and dirt and whatever else, while the rest of the card was being protected by whatever was covering it up. And I kind of like that. I kind of like that you could imagine this card lived in somebody's drawer for a long time, and most of the card, thankfully, was saved from being destroyed. Okay, now why this card is probably my favorite or next to favorite Ty Cobb card. I think it's because, Ty Cobb is a controversial figure in baseball. I mean, that's kind of a tired story at this point. And, I think that, unfortunately, the story of Ty Cobb has basically turned him into a cartoon villain. He's just the bad guy, and we're kind of satisfied with that narrative. And I think the reality is that he's a much more complex character than we may have been led to believe by things like Ken Burns' baseball documentary. And if you don't believe me, you should read that book that recently came out, Ty Cobb, Terrible Beauty, and it might change your mind about a few things. Not going to say that the guy was a saint. That's definitely not true. But there's a lot more to him than a lot of people give him credit for. And I think one of the reasons people didn't like him was because he was really good at what he did on the field, and he was also not afraid of talking about it. And, people don't like other people that brag a lot. And I think Ty Cobb liked to brag a lot, and he liked to point out other people's flaws, and he liked to talk about how great he was, and nobody likes to hang around somebody like that. So, he's an easy guy to pick on, but the guy was really good at baseball. I mean, there's no denying that. And, he had a temper, he had a fiery disposition, and that's why I like this card. I really feel like the design of the card encapsulates the guy's personality. That red background could not be more appropriate. I feel like the intense passion that the guy played the game with, this card really captures that in some way. And just the look on his face, I mean, it looks like Ty Cobb. This does not look like some vague interpretation of Cobb. It's like, there he is. and he looks like he's just about to go murder the game of baseball. So that's one of the reasons I really think that this card is super cool, and I'm so grateful to finally have picked it up, and also very, very grateful to get to share it with all of you. So thank you so much for checking out the video, everybody, and for the conversations that we always have. It's a huge part of what makes collecting so much fun. So thanks for stopping by the channel. Take care. Have a great day. Talk to you all soon.